Welcome to the Millennial Lawyer Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Millennial Lawyer Podcast with personal injury attorney Mark Shirian. I am your host, Kevin Rosenquist, and today's episode is going to be about being injured in a delivery truck accident and what you need to know. Mark, welcome back.
Happy to be here, Kevin.
What are the most common causes of accidents involving Amazon or other delivery trucks in Nassau or Suffolk counties?
Well, delivery truck accidents are often caused by a combination of time pressures, driver fatigue, and distracted driving. Many delivery companies, including Amazon, operate under strict deadlines, which can lead to speeding, reckless lane changes, and failure to yield. Additionally, improper vehicle maintenance, such as worn-out brakes or faulty tires, can also be a contributing factor. In Nassau and Suffolk counties, where suburban streets often have blind intersections and heavy pedestrian traffic, these risks are absolutely heightened.
Yeah, you talk about the rushing around. I mean, you see Amazon drivers, particularly, at least in my neighborhood, they get out of the van and they just haul to the door and back. They're just running as fast as they can. I mean, yeah, you have that kind of energy and that kind of desire to move fast while you're driving, it can lead to some bad stuff. How do the delivery truck accidents differ from regular car accidents in terms of the liability and the compensation involved?
Unlike regular car accidents where liability is typically limited to individual drivers, delivery truck accidents often involve multiple layers of responsibility. The driver, the trucking company, even third-party contractors, such as Amazon's delivery service partners, may all share liability. So this means compensation claims can involve not just personal auto insurance, but also corporate policies, which usually are much larger. However, these corporations aggressively defend against claims to limit payouts.
How do you determine who was at fault in the accident? Like, do you kind of go after, you mentioned, you got the driver, the company, the third party delivery person. Like, what process do you use to determine who's at fault?
So fault is determined by examining multiple factors, including driver behavior. Was the driver speeding, fatigued, using GPS or a handheld device? Company policies. Did the company impose unrealistic delivery quotas that encouraged reckless driving? Vehicle maintenance records. Was the truck properly maintained? Employment status. Was the driver an employee or an independent contractor? This impacts how liability is distributed. We also analyze dashcam footage, black box data, and witness statements in order to establish liability.
How difficult is it for you to obtain some of this evidence? Is there any shady behavior going on? Then they try to claim that either they don't have logs or black box data or things like that, or do they have to be kind of more forthcoming with it?
The best way to answer that is a lot of times insurance companies will not provide you with any information. If they have surveillance video or dashcam footage or witness statements, they're not going to provide this information for you before a lawsuit is filed. After a lawsuit's filed, they're required to provide you this information. But I have rarely seen insurance companies provide dashcam footage or any sort of surveillance video or witness statements before a case is actually put in suit. So that if you can subpoena, that's the thing. It's hard to subpoena third parties without an actual case in suit, because the only way to subpoena anyone is if, from my understanding in New York, if it's related to an underlying case. So very difficult to get that information on your own before a lawsuit's filed. Is it impossible? No. But I think it's important to make sure that you're preserving as much evidence as you possibly can. And you do that, and we do that in our office by sending notices of representation and letters of preservation to make sure that this evidence is being preserved. Because if we file a lawsuit and we find out that it hasn't been preserved, then at least we may have grounds to bring a motion for sanctions or spoliation of evidence if that party was aware that they needed to preserve evidence that we eventually need to prosecute these claims.
So that adds a different layer to, an accident with, versus just a car, just two regular vehicle accidents. So how does the process of what, someone should do after an accident change? If they're in an accident with a delivery truck, are there different steps they should take that's maybe a little different than a typical accident?
Absolutely. So if someone is involved in a delivery truck accident, the immediate steps they should take to protect their rights is to call 911, get medical attention, even if the injuries seem minor. Document the scene, so take photos of the truck, license plates, insurance information, skid marks, and road conditions. Get witness statements. Bystanders can be crucial in proving fault. Avoid speaking to insurance adjusters. They'll just try to get statements that minimize the claim. And contact an attorney immediately. Corporations like Amazon have teams of lawyers. Victims need strong legal representation from the outset. So those are some steps I would take to ensure that they're protecting their rights after getting involved in a delivery truck accident.
Yeah, I've heard that the old, talking to insurance companies, the other insurance company can be, a bad idea. Obviously, we think we've talked about that on this podcast as well. Do the adjusters who call on behalf of companies like Amazon or larger delivery companies, are they more aggressive? Do they take a different approach than your standard one?
Yeah, so Amazon and other major delivery companies have a legal firewall built around them. They often claim that their drivers are independent contractors to escape liability. Another tactic is delaying settlements, hoping victims give up or accept lowball offers. Insurance companies will also argue comparative negligence, trying to place blame on the victim. So successfully overcoming these hurdles requires aggressive litigation, expert testimony, and a clear demonstration of the company's negligence.
We've talked before about how representing yourself is not the best idea when you get into a car accident, like in any situation. Can you talk about how much worse of an idea it is if you're in an accident with a company like Amazon or a large delivery company?
Yeah, I mean, some of the common misconceptions people have when it comes to delivery truck accidents is that they assume Amazon will just take responsibility.
Yeah.
Amazon frequently argues that it's not liable since it uses third-party contractors. So, and then the other misconception is if the driver was at fault, I can only sue them. That's not true. The company may also be liable for unsafe policies, poor training, or improper vehicle maintenance. And the other misconception is I can settle without a lawyer. Big corporations have high-powered defense teams. Without an attorney, victims almost always receive less than they deserve.
Really? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. It definitely makes sense. Is there any specific aspect that's more difficult to prove? Like you said, the maintenance logs or the, driver fatigue and all that stuff. Is there anything that's easier or more difficult to prove in these cases?
I would say, like I've mentioned earlier, the delay layers, who's responsible, makes it a bit more difficult. So it's not just, this is the individual, this is the owner, this is the insurance company, this is the policy. There are a lot of different layers to this type delivery truck accident. So understanding who exactly is at fault and how much insurance coverage there is on a case can make it a little bit more difficult. Not impossible, but difficult.
You mentioned that Amazon will try to shift the blame to the third-party companies saying like, oh, well, it's not our driver, blah, blah, blah. Does that work for them typically? Does it typically not work, or what's the percentage there?
It typically doesn't work, and I'll tell you why. You should look at the uniform of the driver.
Yeah, it's true. It's a good point.
Because if Amazon is giving the perception that they are Amazon employees, even though they later on say that these are third parties employed by somebody else, at least they're giving the perception that these are Amazon workers. So looking at the uniform, the drivers can help you demonstrate that Amazon is the one ultimately, or whoever the company is, at fault for the incident.
And it's kind of like they're just kind of trying to throw the third party company under the bus to some degree, right?
Well, they try to cast off the blame to somebody else. But in New York, you can demonstrate that even if it was a third party who employed them, Amazon also does have joint responsibility and is a joint employer of the at-fault driver.
Mark, what if somebody is involved in a delivery truck accident? Is it more important to retain counsel quickly than in other accidents, just from the scale and the power of the people you're dealing with?
Absolutely, because it's imperative that you put all of these potential responsible parties on notice of the claim. It's not as simple as sending a notice of representation to the driver and the insurance company, but because there are all these different layers that can determine who's at fault, it's important to accurately and quickly send letters of representation putting these potential responsible parties on notice of the claim.
Do they typically more often go to trial, less often go to trial than a regular vehicle accident, or is it about the same?
The same. I would say it depends more on the severity of the injury.
That makes sense.
Whether it goes to trial or not.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Well, thank you for tuning into the Millennial Lawyer Podcast with personal injury attorney Mark Shirian. To connect with Mark, visit ShirianPC.com. And as always, like and subscribe to our channel and leave us a review. Mark, always great having you here. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Ken.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.